Hi.
Welcome everyone to ErgTalk, episode 30. I can't
Yeah,
quite believe we've done 30
I
episodes.
I was thinking the same thing. Like, wow, we've been at this fairly long time, and I'm guessing that includes all. Like, this all started talking about road royalty, right?
Yeah, that's the Road Royalty
So
back in January.
I'm assuming we went back and numbered things based on that. I don't actually remember.
Well, I'm assuming you did, so you're the man in charge of numbering stuff.
Oh
I'm
yeah, yeah, high tech. Hey, I used pen
yeah.
this week. Did you notice?
No, I didn't, but I'll watch the recording back and
Upgrade
appreciate it.
for upgrade for our guest. Anyways, clipboard down. I'm getting. Hey, I was taking. Did you see someone said something about who was it? Someone was making fun of my note cards and legal pads. I don't know. I've I don't know how you organize, but like I still make lists on paper, and I love note cards. Like especially when you have like things you got to group and you want to kind of reorganize and stuff. Like when I was planning events for our
Oh
games, I was
yeah,
like, I just need to write them up and then kind of piece them together
yeah.
after
I
the
mean,
fact.
it's like little like post-it notes. Sometimes I
Oh
do, but
yeah,
mostly I just have it in my head.
Shabs. That was you. That's right. It was you. Unbelievable. That's okay. I
That's
can't
okay.
unless is there an app that is like note cards? Maybe I'd use that.
Probably. I just like do stuff on like note section. I write like for example for ErgTalk, I write all the guests and then I like tick them off when they come on, and that's how I know we're getting all the people on that we promised.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
hey, we all have our systems. I've yet to like find something digital that has the same. It's maybe just because of the era we grew up in. Like, I still need to like. I love seeing like whiteboards are great or chalkboards or whatever, and laying everything out. Like, I want to be able to see everything at once, which is why I love note cards. But whatever. I haven't found a digital system that is as effective for me. Maybe it's
If
out
anyone
there.
knows a digital system that is effective for Justin, let him know. I'm sure there is one out there. I'm sure there'll be some sort of app. We were talking, and if anyone's got any opinions on this, please drop it down in the comments later on or today, of potentially looking into doing this as like a more of a podcast rather than a live on Instagram.
Does that mean I need to
Um,
invest in like a good camera and a
I don't
microphone?
know.
Is that
We'll have a chat about it, but it sort of depends on if the need is there. If people aren't really bothered, then it's fine. But it might be better quality if we get like some recording equipment. I mean, I enjoy doing them, but we'll have to have a
okay?
chat about it, won't we?
That'd be fun. Something
Yeah.
planned for 2022, maybe.
Yes, definitely. Right, should we get our guest on? You can
He's
search for
already.
Duncan.
He actually was requesting before you did. So
I've already messaged him. I already
kudos
told
to
him what to
him.
do, so he's on the ball today.
Is he on land or is he at sea? That's what I want to know. This
Probably
would be
at
pretty
sea.
rad. This would be pretty rad if he was like
I
out rowing.
think he spends
There he
most of
is.
his time in the
Oh,
water. There he is.
Hey
unbelievable.
guys.
Thanks for
Welcome.
joining us. Are you on land or is that a boat you're in there?
That's a heck of
No,
a
no,
boat
I'm
if
on
he
land
is.
today.
You're on land today. You are out a lot though, aren't you? You are in the water a lot. Have you been out today?
Not been out today, no, but I was out, yeah, Monday, Tuesday this week. It sort of tends to be this time of year when the weather's better that I'm out quite frequently. And then as it gets to the tail end of the year and the weather gets less predictable, I'll have a big chunk of time off the water. So yeah, just a busy
And that's
period at the
that's for your
moment.
that's for your job, isn't it? Because you are an ocean rowing coach now. We are going to talk about more of this later on, but is that the reason why you were out on the water yesterday? Are you coaching people?
That's right, yeah. Just out with people, getting them prepared for their own ocean rows. Yeah, so out quite frequently, just making sure that they're ready to go and sort of getting through my ocean rowing syllabus with them. So yeah, I was out with a guy, really awesome guy yesterday called Mike, who's the Atlantic grappler. So he's a black belt in jiu-jitsu.
Wow.
He's done all sorts of things in his career, like a phenomenal guy. Now he's going to row solo across the Atlantic Ocean next December. Yeah,
So if there's any sharks or anything that come up, he'll just be able to flip them on the back and
I
off he
don't
goes
think
again.
that
choke
works.
him out. Yeah.
I don't know if that's true.
I think it's true. So let's give Duncan a bit of an intro because obviously we've just been
Yeah.
chatting about your ocean rowing. But Duncan is, in fact, go on, Duncan. You tell the people who you are, what you do, and why you're on here.
What's your name and where do you come from?
Okay.
So my name's Duncan Roy. I'm an ocean rower. That's I guess why I'm on here today. My background is in indoor rowing, so I'm a huge advocate for indoor rowing. You'll all be glad to hear. That's how I know Ollie, and I know of Justin, but Justin and I haven't really connected before. And then through indoor rowing, I got onto river rowing, which then spiraled into ocean rowing. And as of today, I've rowed across the Atlantic Ocean twice, circumnavigated 82% of around Britain, and just earlier on this year, rowed across the Pacific Ocean. Well, the mid-Pacific.
Wow. Amazing. I mean, it's the kind of stuff that I'm just completely jealous of. And I know, obviously, you haven't done this, your whole life. You did start off in the army, didn't you? Do you want to talk us through? You obviously started in the army, and then you got, is it medically discharged, and then you worked your way into rowing?
Yeah, that's right, mate. So, I'd never really erged or rowed until I was 25. So my sort of previous background, as you say, I was in the military. I was in the Royal Engineers. I loved my time in the military, and then I got injured. I'd love to say it's a cool story about falling out of a helicopter or something, but I was just injured on a training exercise. So, after that, getting injured, it was sort of like, what can I do with my physicality? And it was my knee that I injured. I dislocated it, stretched all the tendons. They sort of repaired them, but the meniscus was damaged, so it was sort of bone on bone. Couldn't do any impact work, if you like, couldn't do any running. So I was just trying to find something to fill that void of running and doing all the things that I was doing before in the military. So that's where, indoor rowing came from. And I was just starting off doing 10 minutes. And then, as everyone classically does, builds up to doing like 10Ks, 2Ks and that sort of thing. And then, just spiraled into competing. And there's a fair few people who really paramount for that. Scott Pollock, a few other people like at that time in that era who were just driving indoor rowing through the army. Steve Camden-Lew, one of my best mates, who you've met, Ollie, a few times.
Yep.
Some really awesome people in the sport who just really developed it. And I just, right time, right place, just happened to be getting into it just as it was exploding in the army. And it was just a really nice journey going from having never rowed before to learning this new sport and then competing within the army and obviously meeting loads of really cool people on the civilian circuit through, the sub-7 indoor rowing team and all the different teams that are out there, the CTC that goes on every month, and different competitions and different socials that we've done in the past, Ollie.
Mm-hmm. I really, that's how I first got introduced into the indoor rowing scene, when I went down with Rochelle, my girlfriend, to Warwick. I think it was Warwick. You were doing the 100K. Right, yeah. And I wasn't meant to be rowing that day. I went down just to support Rochelle, because Rochelle was doing the female 100K, and when I went down, there was also a men's 100K. And I remember Rochelle saying to Casey Clark, saying, "Oh, Ollie does a bit of indoor rowing." And I had been doing indoor rowing at that time with Rochelle, at the gym, as a bit of fun, because it had been a while since I'd rowed previously in a boat. And I was like, I've just got some gym kit in my boot. I'd brought my gym kit thinking, I hope they asked me to join in. And Casey was like, "All right, then you can hold the straps if you want." And I was like, "Right, okay, then I'll just help out." And I ended up, thankfully, joining in on the group, and Duncan was one of them. Such a great group of guys that were there that day, including Dan and
Dan Stan,
James as well.
Cartwright,
Exactly, yeah. Some great guys, amongst many others. And I really just loved the sort of camaraderie that you guys had. And I know not everyone there was in the military, but it did seem as though there was a lot of you there who were ex or current military. And it's such a great group of guys, and it sort of just willed me to come into that indoor rowing scene. And I was like, I want to get involved with this more. And I've done a few of them. I've done the 24-hour row with you as well. It was such a great group of guys that were there.
Yeah, phenomenal memories. See Steve Sidway there in the comments. Big up Warwick. Steve drove that, getting us down there. Part sub-7 indoor row club. It's just like you say, it was a great event, and you meet so many inspirational people through that, and you spend a lot of time sort of talking online, don't you? And then you finally meet these people, and you're like, you're like, oh my God, you're a real person. This is awesome. And then you're like just absolutely buzzing after having shared adversity going through these
Yeah.
6 week 2K plans and all this sort of thing. And then finally being there together, it's just such a good buzz. And I remember, mate, when you jumped on, you were like pulling like sub 110 pace. And I was like, who is this guy? Just like, I was like, you're going to break the machine.
I mean, Duncan, you're such a motivational character. I still remember to this day at the start of the 24-hour row. I don't know if you remember. There was a false. Do you remember the false start? And I can't remember what you did, but you were like whoop. You did like a whoop, and I just remember thinking like, oh, this is a great way to start this 24-hour row. And everyone was behind you. It was such a good thing to do. What I did want to ask though, because sort of part of me wishes that I'd gone into the army. Like a bit of me thinks, oh, I kind of wish I'd experienced that experience in the army, because from everyone that I've sort of come across that have been in indoor rowing in the army, it sounds like such a great thing. And I'm sort of talking about any forces here, like people in the Royal Navy and things like that. How much of your sort of identity is linked to the army, and is it something that you'll always carry with you, or is it sort of it's been and gone, and that's just one chapter of your life over?
Yeah, great question, mate. I mean, yeah, it's been even though I was only in the military for 5 years total. I had wanted to join and stay in for like a whole career, so 20 plus years potentially. I had no intentions of leaving, and I loved it. I loved my time there, and most of my friends now are my military mates who still stay in contact with, and we all make an effort to stay in touch. Big man down there, yeah, RAF, big up. You meet so many awesome people through that journey, and so many like-minded, driven individuals. It's something that I'm really grateful and privileged to have done, and to the guys that I met along the way. There's so many things that I didn't get to do in my time in the military, but I don't look at that in any way sort of in a negative light. I just, like you say, in some ways it is a chapter that's behind me, but it's something that lessons that I learned, people that I met, and things that I take through with me right through to today. And I think one of the biggest things that the army gave me was that self-confidence piece. I think coming from a small village in North Yorkshire, sort of I didn't, know what my limits were, because I'd never really had to, I used to go running hard up in the hills here and always enjoyed exercise, but I really never got that chance to really push myself to my limit. And joining the military certainly gave me that opportunity, and being around other people who were motivated and driven. It's sort of, I always remember an adventurer, Sean Conway. Have you heard of him before? Really awesome guy, cycled around the world and done a few other things. I remember seeing a talk that he did, and one of the things that he said, he said, you'll meet, it's called the snowball of life. He's like, you put yourself out there to do, say, a tough mudder, and then you'll meet people through that who are keen and wanting to do something else. And then you find that one person out of that group that you did it with who's willing to do that next thing. And then before you know it, you're doing something absolutely incredible. And I just certainly feel that that's resonated with me, and something that, I've constantly sort of met people who are like Steve Camden Lou, for example. I'll mention his name again, but Cammy, such an awesome guy we met, through the military, and we've done so many things, so many different scrapes we've been in since, through indoor rowing and river rowing. We've done our indoor rowing instructors course together, we've done all sorts. And, I was very, very lucky to be at his wedding a couple of weeks ago, and it's that sort of journey with friends for life. It's an incredible thing. And I would recommend the military, whether that be the army, the RAF, or whether that be the Navy. It's sort of, I couldn't recommend it highly enough to anyone, really.
Fantastic. Obviously, for the people I've met, there has been a lot of them in the military. I mean, mainly through Sub 7, but there's obviously others like Dan, who's in the RAF. But do you find there's a lot of indoor rowers coming from the military, or is that just because I've sort of met most of them, or is it I've met everyone, or is there like a big gang of you?
I think you've probably met a lot of them, or heard of a lot of like the big players in it, definitely. I think my view on it's probably swayed because obviously I've competed in the Army indoor rowing leagues, and rowed with the Army team and stuff like that. So coming into the civvy circuit, I know like Ian Wilde, all the guys who are like big names in the military indoor rowing scene that have then come across, Stu Jackson, all these different people who have been a huge, big influence on Army indoor rowing, who obviously being big, and whether that's in the past or to this day on the indoor rowing scene and the civilian side as well.
Right. Um, and obviously, you talked about your river rowing. I don't think I know about your river rowing. Sort of, I knew you were an indoor rower, and then all of a sudden you were just rowing across the world, and I was like, wow, that sounds amazing.
Yeah, we
So,
skipped a few
yeah,
chapters
you
there.
want to talk us through the river, and then obviously the start? How did you get involved in your first ocean row? Because to most people, an ocean row is just something they hear about on the news. Like they'll see the people stood there with the flares at the end, and it'll say like so and so rowed across the ocean. But we never hear about how people actually get into it.
Yeah, good question, mate. So yeah, river rowing then. I mean, it was a brief spell, if I'm honest. I didn't do it for very long, but it was very fortunate again through the army that through the competitions that we were doing, I was invited down to the to Abingdon to the Army Rowing Club to do one of their learn to row courses, and it was a 1 week course, and it was literally during work time, and they took you out on the water, showed you how to use a really sort of stable boat to begin with, and then they took you through the different levels of boats in that week. And it was a really intensive camp, getting you basically proficient at Cox quads, at schools, and all the rest of it. And it's just a really phenomenal week. And again, that was just something I was very fortunate to be part of, having gone from a year before being injured, and being at my all-time lowest point in my life, where my future career is at jeopardy. I'm potentially looking at being medically discharged, to then learning a new sport, which is now organically grown into a new skill, which was river rowing. So it became a big passion very quickly. I was looking for rowing clubs in my local area. North Devon, there's coastal rowing clubs I was sort of exploring. But I was fortunate the Army Rowing Club ran various different events for us to go to. So it was very much beginner level, but it was just a phenomenal thing. And it just gave me those sort of basic skills to understand, well, actually, yes, erging does translate onto the river, but not, you've got to sort of take a step back first to learn the fundamentals before all that conditioning piece comes through. And it was sort of really eye-opening, that sort of the skill element to it, and it's not just go in and rip the handle as hard as you can.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's one thing that I've always had of people go, and I have rowed on the water before, but someone like Rochelle, for example, who's amazing on the indoor rower as a female rower, and people will say, oh, why don't you go to the Olympics? And it's like, well, for starters, like we're fairly fast for indoor rowers, but we're nowhere near Olympic standard. But even if you are like super fast on the indoor row, you can't just jump in a boat and then be perfect, because they're totally different sports, really. I know they're similar, but they are very, very different. It's something I've come across, people thinking, oh, you can just jump in a boat. But
Yeah, people think it just translates straight through. But yeah, I think the analogy I've tried to use when people have asked me the same thing is like, it'd be like saying to someone who trained for years and years and years on a watt bike, who'd never ever stepped foot on like a road bike. And it's like, to start with, it's like all of that strength, that power, and all that knowledge and the tactics of racing, whether that's on Swift or whatever, it's not relevant to begin with, because you need to learn to ride with the stabilizers on first, then take the stabilizers off and get the feel for it before all of that conditioning comes in down the line. And I remember one of our coaches saying that we, as in the group of military guys who'd been ripping the handle off an erg for a few years, they were like, or a couple of years, whatever it was, they were saying, you guys are the worst people to train, because all you want to do is just rip that handle through the water. Whereas like they're saying, when you've got children or people who actually physically aren't very strong or who have never really erged much, you've got people, they find the easiest way to get the most power down, and that's the most effective way, which is how you river row. And then the power comes into it later on. So yeah, something that one of the coaches told me, but it definitely comes in down the line for sure.
Definitely. And so that was your sort of river rowing, but then how did you get involved with the ocean rowing? It sounds like you're sort of laying the foundations for the steps. It does sound like an easier step now from river rowing to ocean, whereas previously I thought you just went from rowing on the erg to straight out in the middle.
I feel like you'd go river to lake, and then maybe lake to big lake, and then to ocean. Like that's so daunting to me. Like I just think of, and you said Pacific earlier, and that just blew my mind too. But anyways, let's hear this.
Yeah. I mean, it is mad, isn't it, when you think about it? But what was the journey? So as the story goes, I was in my gym when again in the military, down at 2-4 Commando Royal Engineers in North Devon. I was at the gym there in February 2016. And there's a guy called Ollie Clark, who was the adjutant at the time at the regiment. He was in there stretching off, and he was looking really lean and really tanned. And I was thinking in February, I was like, where has he been? I know the regiment hasn't been away on deployment. Like, where on earth has he been? So I just went up to him and I was like, sir, where have you been? And he was like, oh, I've just rowed across the Atlantic Ocean. And I was like, what do you mean you've rowed across the Atlantic Ocean? And he went, well, yeah, we got in a boat in the Canaries and we rowed 3,000 miles to Antigua, and it literally blew my mind. I was like, they're like getting in, rowing 2K, rowing 10K, like, you know, doing all these distances on the erg. And I was like, there's people rowing for 3,000 miles. I was like, I just don't get it. And then I was totally captivated, and it just came at the perfect time because I was injured. I knew at that point I was going to be getting medically discharged from the military. And I thought, this is my Everest now. Like, this is my thing. I was like, I'm going to just focus my entire being on this, whatever it takes. And I have a lot to thank Ollie Clark for inspiring me to do it. But he took me under his wing massively and sort of gave me that sort of steer as to what to do in those initial steps. Because as you say, it's a very daunting thing wanting to row an ocean. You've got that burning desire, but it's like, what are the steps to actually making it happen? And I think as well in the military, like rowing in general, river rowing is a sort of quite an elitist thing, isn't it? And I think ocean rowing as well, it's not necessarily an elitist thing, but generally speaking, it takes obviously a lot of funding to do it and all the rest of it. And as a private in the British Army, or a sapper as my rank was, it's not the sort of thing it's openly readily available for someone who has never really rowed before or anything like that, you know. So he was really good, and he could see the motivation that I had and wanted to give me a steer, to give me an opportunity to do it. So he was saying, look, it's going to cost about £100,000 or more to row an ocean. That's the sort of the budget that you'd be looking at. And he's like, it's one of the common sort of themes in ocean rowing is the hardest part is getting to the start line. And he was just like, look, there are other ways about going about it. You know, there are teams and people out there who are doing pay-per-seat crossings. So people who own a boat, who are doing a row, and they're selling seats on that boat. So your typical team is like the three of us now saying, right, we want to row the Atlantic Ocean, let's say. And we put a team together. We come up with a team name, like the Three Ergers. And then we start getting like people to sponsor us and all the rest of it, on a website, social media, so on and so forth. And together as a three, we go through that journey and acquire all the funding we need to do it. Whereas with these pay-per-seat crossings, there aren't many people who do them, but there was a team that was going out in December 2017 to row from Portugal all the way across to South America to French Guiana. And they were looking for people to join the team. So Ollie Clark was like, look, that could be an option where it's a lot more financially like accessible. You know, for that, it's like £15,000, which is still a lot of money. You know, it's a lot more than doing a marathon or an Ironman, isn't it? But it's a lot more achievable to raise £15,000 than it is £100,000 when you've never, as a private in the army, I'd never done any marketing. I'd never done any, you know, corporate engagement. I'd never had to do all of that side of things. So I thought, well, that is it. That's the way to do it. So anyway, I applied for this team and, you know, put a bit of a rowing CV together, as it were, with like the different things I'd done. I put the 100K down that we did later on in 2017 and all these different bits when it came to it. Anyway, I got on the team and it was a Dutch-led team. And we went out for the first training camp. It's hilarious. We were there doing like roles and responsibilities, and the skipper's like, right, well, Duncan's a Royal Engineer, so he'll be in charge of, you know, fixing the boat if anything goes wrong, any electronics, that sort of thing. And I was like, I don't know if you know what combat engineers do, Royal Engineers. We can't. I won't be able to fix the boat. I was like, I'll be able to blow the boat up, but I would not be able to fix it. And he's like, oh, so you can't do electronics and, you know, you can't fix it. I was like, no, I wouldn't be able to do the first thing if you showed me an electronics panel. It's quite funny, but he was like, oh, well, you've got a good engine from your indoor row, and like that'll be the main thing then. So that was it.
Was that the reason he hired you? Was that the reason he sort of let you on the boat thinking you were going to fix, and then you were like, I can't do any of that?
Well, I think that was one of the facets. He was like, great, it'd be great to have an engineer on the team. And I was like, Yeah, I don't think you know what Royal Engineers do.
Oh
That's
dear.
funny.
So then obviously you got in that boat. So you stayed in that boat, and is that your first? I'm sort of jumping ahead of the story. Is that your first crossing then?
Yeah, so that was the first team. So we were called the Atlantic Allies. That was our name. And we decided to call ourselves the Atlantic Allies because we were a Dutch, Irish, and English. It sounds like I'm about to say a joke, doesn't it? But we're a Dutch, Irish, and English team. And because, like I say, we were just five individuals coming together for this row, we were like, look, well, let's call ourselves the Atlantic Allies because we were five independent teams. And I suppose it is worth saying, actually, for the audience that might be interested in this, is for the preparation for that row, to raise the money that I needed to do that. Because I wasn't sure how to market myself and go to corporate to ask for, the sort of funding that we would need and what would they gain from it. The only thing I could think that would be feasible to earn the money to do it would be to do a series of indoor rowing events in public places. So I don't know if you remember us doing those, but I did all
I
these.
remember the marathons. Was that the time you did the marathons?
Yeah,
That
that's
felt like
right.
not too long ago, but was that for that row then?
Yeah, I mean, since then I've done a different marathon-based challenge for every row that I've done because it just ended up being a really good mental preparation piece. But yeah, for that first row, I did 7 marathons in 7 days in a shopping centre called the
Yeah, I remember
aptly
that.
named Atlantic Village. The idea was that I wanted to get quicker on each day, and it was in this shopping centre, and people would be coming around doing their like October half-term shopping before Christmas or whatever. And yeah, it was just mental because it wasn't just the marathon. I was having to coordinate like all the insurance and like liaising with people, all this, that, and the other, and then do the row, and then spend the next 5 hours that we were there each day talking about what we were doing. We were rowing 3,800 miles from Portugal to French Guiana to break the world record of 48 days, 4 hours and 30 minutes. You're doing this whole engagement piece. So by the time each day finished, I was absolutely exhausted. And it got to like day 7, and I literally just was completely done. Like day 8, I couldn't eat anything for like 3 days. My body just shut down completely.
Wow.
But it really gave me some good mental preparation
Mm.
going through that, because it wasn't just the marathon ergs that I had to do each day. It was all the other faff around it.
Yeah, definitely some good mental preparation for sure. I did want to move into sort of the mechanics of ocean rowing. So we know how you've done your first rowing, and you've done a few more since then, which we'll hopefully come on to during maybe some stories. But the mechanics of ocean rowing, how different is it rowing a boat on the ocean compared to just like an indoor rower? What are the similarities? I can imagine there's few similarities apart from the actual stroke. But how long do you row for? Do you row for like half an hour and then have a big break, or what's the deal?
Yeah, mate, great question. Really good question. First things, as you highlight, movement pattern, is very similar. The stroke is, as we know, legs, body, arms, the sequencing, and realistically, it is fairly similar on the ocean, but that changes when the boat's getting tipped around left and right, front and back. So trying to coordinate that is different, and it is a huge. Before I delve into it, it's a huge conversation piece within the ocean rowing community, whether erg training is relevant to ocean rowing, and you've got people in the camp to say that erg training is not relevant to ocean rowing, and you've got people like myself who are massive advocates of erg training for ocean rowing. I think there's the conditioning for your body, but also the mindset piece. Like if you're getting tucked into a marathon erg, an anaerobic sort of threshold, it is brutal, isn't it? And that mental preparation, the place you've got to go to complete that, really does sharpen you up, ready for the task ahead. But yeah, so first off, yeah, it's a divisive subject, but for me, I'm massively in the erg training camp, partly because I love the sport of erging, but I also really do believe in the crossover. When it comes down to shift patterns, the most common shift pattern on an ocean row is 2 hours on, so 2 hours rowing, then 2 hours resting, and then 2 hours on, 2 hours, basically 2 on, 2 off the entire time.
Wow.
People think like, do you sleep at night? It's the boat is always getting rowed. So if there's a 4-man team, let's say a 4-female team, a 4-person team, you've got 2 rowers rowing, 2 rowers resting, and the idea is that you just rotate around every 2 hours. So the boat is always being moved, and you got to think it when you do those things. 2 hours off, like when we've done our 24-hour erg ollie, and I'm sure you've done similar things, Justin. The 2 hours off, it goes. the 2 hours off goes so quick, and it's
Justin's
about
got kids, so maybe
Oh,
his
is it
kids
like
when they
that?
were big.
Oh, okay.
very
Yeah.
similar.
Got it.
Must be very similar.
Yes.
And yeah, the 2 hours off goes super quick, and you've got obviously responsibilities on board. You've got to obviously do your navigation and communication pieces, updating, weather route, anything from the race coming in. You've got to then rehydrate. You've got to refuel, cook your food, eat your food. Any jobs to do on deck. There's various things you've got to do before you can get your head down, and then you've obviously got to be up in time to go on to your next shift. So if you're really hot on your admin and there's not much stuff to do, you're probably maximum going to get about, I don't know, an hour and a half sleep, an hour and 20 if you're lucky, in that 2 hours off. So people think 2 hours sleep, oh God, but it's not. It's never 2 hours sleep. It's probably about an hour and 20. So that's the routine, the general routine that people utilize. But then also it's the intensity. So if you do a 2-hour erg, the intensity of that is a lot harder than 2 hours on the ocean. It just is like it absolutely wipes me if I do like a hard 2-hour erg. Like I'm toast for like the entire day. But obviously on the ocean you've got to sustain yourself, and part of it is being in tune with the ocean, being in tune with your teammate, and maximizing each stroke, rather than just head down, just belligerently grizzing it out. It's not about that, whereas the erg is very much more just raw power. Obviously it's about pacing and all the rest of it, but it really is just raw effort, isn't it? Whereas the ocean,
I think the differences I can sort of relate it to is when I go cycling. Not that I've done it in a while, but I remember cycling for like 6, 7, 8 hours on a weekend, and no problem at all, really. Like just coasting along. I'd zip up to Blackpool or whatever and come back. But when I'm on the erg, like even an hour row is a tough row because you've got nothing to look at. You're literally you and the screen, and if anyone sits next to you, then that's a bit of company. But usually I'm on my own, and I can imagine the difficulty in having to row like 2 hours on the erg. But compare that to, I'm not saying it's easy in the water, but at least you've got stuff to look at. Is that kind of the gist you're getting at?
What are you looking at on the water?
yeah,
I don't know, just like fish and
You're
jumping
moving
out.
like, is there any feedback? At least on an erg, you have feedback, right?
yeah,
Or you can watch Netflix. Some people watch TV or whatever.
yeah,
like,
good point.
there's stuff to distract you, but I can't imagine. It must feel like you're moving nowhere because this is just water forever.
Yeah, it's a really good observation, and it does feel like you're not going anywhere. It feels what it feels like. It feels like you're on a simulator. So when you go to the fairground, there's those like, I don't know, aeroplane simulators you go in. It just feels like you're in one of them with hydraulics just tipping you around all over the place, and the water's going past you, but there's no reference points of things to see. So there's just a lot of small waves and a lot of big waves, and that's pretty much it. You don't really see, much. And you'd speak to people when they rode an ocean, and they're like, "Oh, we saw a whale, and we saw this, we saw that." But when you spread that out over the 40, 50, 60 days you're at sea, 99% of the time it's just ocean.
And what about the night rowing? It's just
Yeah,
it's black. Like I could at least imagine there's just clouds maybe, or I don't know what's out there. Everything's flying around, but like
I mean, in
you
my
can't
head,
imagine you have big spotlights in the middle of the night. I'm not sure how that works, but
maybe
Yeah.
the moon might be a good spotlight for you.
oh my
yeah.
gosh.
The moon is like an incredible head torch when it's out. If you're out there rowing on a full moon, it's unbelievable. It
You
can
must have
almost
saw
feel like daylight. Get cast shadows. It's like so powerful.
beautiful night skies, I bet.
Absolutely phenomenal, and it is. It's mesmerizing. The dark time, the nighttime sky out there. There's no light pollution. It's absolutely phenomenal. But yeah, you do get days where either there's no moonlight at all, or there's just heavy cloud cover, and it can be that dark that you can't differentiate where the horizon, where the horizon is. You can't differentiate where the ocean is and where the sky is,
Oh,
which
that's
is really
good point.
disorientating when there's a heavy sea, because you're getting rocked around all over the place and you don't really know what's going on. You can't see the waves as they're hitting you, and it's really hard trying to stay in tune with the water and stay in tune with your teammate when the water's just crashing all around everywhere.
I remember you told me a story. I don't want to ruin it, and I'm hopefully you remember what the story is, because I'm sure you've had many stories. But it's a story about. I don't want to give away the sort of like the punchline, but it was you were rowing at night time.
Oh yeah.
Go on. Do you remember which story I'm talking about? You have to
think I
slam
know
the
which
oars
one
down
you
on your thighs.
Oh,
That
go
one.
on. Which one? The one with
You said the oars, sort of, you had to slam the oars down on your thighs because something had happened that made you like stop rowing, and you were like, I need to stop.
I don't know if I thought you were going to say another one. No, I'm not sure about
It
that
was
one,
something
mate.
about like you were looking at the horizon, then all of a sudden the horizon just
Oh,
went.
yes. Yeah. That time. Okay, yeah. So I was rowing. That was in the first row, in 2017, across the Atlantic, and yeah, the big seas that year, and yeah, very similar, where we could hardly make out where the horizon was, and next thing, the horizon just lifted, and it was just this huge wave. And sometimes you get huge waves that break before the boat, and you're absolutely fine. But if it breaks and you're right in it, which doesn't happen very often, it will absolutely smash you. And yeah, it basically broke, and we just had no time to brace, and literally it just picked me and the skipper up and chucked us off our seats, and we were sort of in the side of the gunnel of the boat, just literally hanging on for dear life. And what had happened was the oar had been like ripped out of my hand, pulled under the boat, and fortunately the oar didn't snap. But what happened was the 9mm steel plate, which is the outrigger, it just bent right the way around. And it just shows the power of Mother Nature, you know, for the water, the power of the water to bend a 9mm steel bracket, you know, sort of this big and that thick, just absolutely incredible.
Sounds absolutely insane. I mean, I'm going to ask you about some specific situations in a bit, but I've seen videos of like cargo ships being snapped in half by the ocean. I can only imagine that a little boat is very vulnerable when you're out in the big sea.
They do handle well though, like, you know, it has to be said, Rannoch Adventure, who build, you know, the world leading ocean rowing boats, they're absolutely phenomenal. And it doesn't take long for you out there, you know, the first time you go to sea, to realise just how incredible those boats are. Like, you'll see a wave and you'll be like, oh, this is going to get us big time, and the boat will just ride straight over it. They are really good, those boats, to be fair.
Has there ever been like a situation where you've just thought, right, I've got to lock myself in the cabins here? Because you've got a cabin at each end, is that right? So you've got the boat here, and then like a cabin at that end and a cabin at the other end, and then obviously you sit in the middle. If anyone hasn't seen an ocean rowing boat, is there ever been a time where you've just thought, get inside because we might get swept out here?
Yeah, exactly that, and that was a good little diagram of the boat, actually. That's spot on. And yeah, we've got this cabin at either end, and yeah, there was times on that first row where the conditions were just so punchy that we couldn't row in it. We couldn't make forward progress. It was like storm-like conditions. So in that situation, we have a parachute that deploys underneath the water, and it basically stabilizes the boat and pulls the nose round into the conditions. It's called a storm anchor or a parachute anchor. And the idea being that you just go onto that whilst you're in these storm-like conditions till it passes. And for us on that first row, there's 5 of us, 5 big guys, and we were crammed into the cabins. So there's 3 of us crammed in the bow cabin. And these cabins, they're not big, they're not spacious. And to give you an idea of how small it was, and we were on there for 5 days and 5 nights, which was a long soul-searching time. And I was in there with my head up at the bow of the boat, so it's like curves around like this, like the very front of the boat, comes down, and then I've got a guy either side with their head down by my feet and their sort of feet coming up to here. And you know, you've got to keep the cabin door shut in case you roll and the boat capsizes. The idea is it's airtight to then flip back up. So you've got to keep hatch discipline at all times. As the wave comes through, it inflates the parachute, makes the line go taut, then the wave comes through, the line slackens, then it hits the boat, and then you get rocked the other way. So constantly you're just getting rocked around. Like it's absolutely horrendous. Anyone who's been on parachute anchor will tell you it's awful. Anyway, I was up there, head at the bow, and I just had a moment where I was just like, what am I doing? Like, what is going on? I literally put my hands on my face and I just sort of went down the side of my face, and when I got to here, I felt one pair of feet on that side of my hand and one pair of feet on that side of hand, and I
God.
realised my personal space was the width of my hand. I was like, this is a grim situation.
I'd find that really difficult. I don't know about you, Justin, but I'm quite claustrophobic. And I think if I was doing an ocean row, I'd have to be like a pair, I think. So I had my own space, because I'd be getting like really claustrophobic. I just want to like get out. I'd be like, I don't care if I get swept out to sea. I just need to stand up, which would obviously be the wrong thing to do.
It's funny, yeah. It's like, it's a strange sport, isn't it? Because you've got the sort of claustrophobia of being in a small cabin, but then you've got the agoraphobia of being in a huge, wide open space.
Yeah, it must be some risky situations you get in.
Why am I breaking up?
Oh, I'm back. Are you back?
Yeah, I'm
Hello?
here. Yeah, hello.
Am I back?
Justin, are you there? Yeah, I can hear you, Justin.
Okay.
One thing I was going to ask was,
Okay.
and I don't know how much you want to talk about this in specifics. You can be more general if you want, but the friendships and the relationships you have with the people on the boat, can they ever get, if we want to generalize it, can people on boats, they must have arguments with people on the boat, and it's obviously you can't go anywhere. So sort of what happens in that situation?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the biggest challenges teams face, team dynamic, it's massive. And, people talk about it in corporate companies, businesses, teams, professional sport, getting the right culture and getting that team dynamic right is absolutely paramount, because in a harsh environment like that, where you're under stressful situations and people are tired, being seasick and all the rest of it, you see the very best and the very worst of people out there. And if you're not very aligned as a team, then you're going to have a tough time. And there's a famous example, of James Cracknell and Ben Fogle when they did the Atlantic race in, I think it was 2005, I think, and they wrote a book and did like a documentary series on YouTube. It's on YouTube called Through Hell and High Water. And it's a famous example because you've got James Cracknell, as you very well know, he's like highly driven, wanting to just absolutely smash it, and his sort of mantra was, if you're not out of breath, you're not rowing hard enough. Whereas Ben Fogle, bless him, just out there for the enjoyment and just to see a few dolphins and get across safely, and that sort of clash of views and mission statements, as you like, meant that those guys had a bit of a tough time, I think. I mean, certainly not high-performing team from that perspective. Clearly, they had an amazing adventure, but they could have been a lot more aligned. And, I know that they're very open about that. But yeah, I've seen it all, on sort of 4 different ocean rows that I've done. I've had, teams and friendships that have been forged through shared adversity, and those are bonds that will never be broken. And there's guys that, I'll never speak to again in my life,
Wow, it sounds very intense, and I know the documentary you're talking about with Ben. I was actually going to ask about Ben and James later on about sort of are you looking to get into more sort of adventures that they might have done. But there's also, if you are interested in ocean rowing, this is for everyone watching. There is a great documentary I watched about, I think it was the 4 female ocean rowers. It's on YouTube, I think. I watched that. I can't remember what it was called, but that was absolutely fantastic. If you want to watch
losing sight of shore. The Cox's crew, they rode the whole Pacific. It's phenomenal, yeah.
Yeah, really great documentary. So that's sort of the friendship side of it. What about sort of life on the boat? I've got some personal questions to ask you here. And the first one, which is at the forefront of my mind, I'm sure it is of everyone else's mind, maybe not what some people are thinking, but it's how do you go to the toilet when you're on the boat? Because
I'm thinking that.
you obviously don't have a loo there, do you? You don't have a toilet.
Yeah, great question, and everyone wants to know that. So yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it's nothing fancy. It's just pretty much a builder's bucket,
Right.
and yeah, you just book it and chuck it. That's it.
Bucket and chuck it.
Is that it?
Yeah,
You'd think in 2021 that they'd have something a bit more elaborate than a bucket.
Yeah, I mean, some teams go fancy. Some teams go fancy. They get what is called a lugaloo, and it's like a bucket where you can clip like a plastic toilet seat and lid onto it. But yeah, extra weight, extra faff. So yeah, I've never used one.
Where do you go to the toilet? So you're talking about the bucket, obviously, but you're not doing that in your bed, are you? Like sat there in your bed?
No. Yeah, never in the cabin. So where the way the boats run, especially the boats that I've ran on, you're always trying to keep the rowers rowing. So sort of golden rule is any breaks, anything you need to do, you do when you're not rowing on your off shift. So that's in your own time. So if you need to take a toilet break, that is on your off period. And we would do that in like the admin area, but the admin area is at the stern of the boat. So if you've got two people rowing and you're trying to take a number two and you're looking at the guys just having a conversation, you're just like, oh guys, what do you reckon about this, or some sort of trivia question, and you get used to it pretty quick.
Yeah, I was going to say that's obviously something that you're used to at the time, but for everyone else, I'll be thinking, oh my god, like, is that something that you like? The first time you did that, you must have thought, like, what am I doing here? Yeah. Can I not do it at the back of the boat?
Exactly, and you're like, yeah, can't we just? But yeah, you just have to get on with it, and you get to know people really quickly on an ocean rowing boat. It's an 8 meter by 1.5 meter boat, and you've just got to get on with it, haven't you?
I've got like maybe this is an unwise thing to do, but I would be like, well, I'm chucking it in the water anyway. Can I not just have a jump in, see some dolphins and some whales, and get rid of my waste, and then hop back on? Is that not something you've ever done?
I mean, that has been done. That is coined, as Angus Collins would say, an aquapoo. And I've seen that done. I haven't done it myself, I must say, but I have seen it done. But the problem is you go in the water and then you slow the boat down massively because you just hit a 95 kilo anchor just jumped off the boat. So yeah, you can't. We do go in every now and again to clean the boat, but you can't go every time you need the loo.
And what about food? So Justin, I know you want to ask about food, don't you? Justin, do you reckon? Do you reckon you could go to the toilet in front of a gang of people staring at you? I don't reckon I could.
Could you even do it with the door open at home?
Well, I don't do that.
Let alone in front of I've been in enough locker rooms in sports, but I couldn't imagine out in the middle of nowhere. Well, you know what? Like you said, you probably get used to it real fast, but I'm sure that first few days you're like probably holding it in. I wonder how many people get constipated because they don't want to go to the bathroom in that sort of situation early on.
Yeah, they're thinking, I'll just wait 8 weeks and it'll be fine. No one needs to see this.
Didn't poop once. Yeah, wouldn't that be something?
Yeah. So food. Yeah. What about the food?
Yeah. So food. I mean, the main source of your calories comes from dehydrated food. So have you ever had a dehydrated meal pack before? Either. I've
had when I went to. I sound like such a child here, but when I went to Kennedy Space Center in Florida, I had dehydrated ice cream. So apparently, it's like what they had in the space shuttle. So I've had dehydrated ice cream, but no other dehydrated meals. Maybe like a noodle pack or something.
Yeah, exactly, just like that, or like a pot noodle. So just sort of just powder form food that you add water to and it rehydrates. But they've come on leaps and bounds over the years, and they're absolutely phenomenal. There's various different companies that are out there now, and they do really, really good ration packs. So yeah, we get, I'd say, total calories, I'm 95 kilos, so usually you'd work off 6,000 calories a day for someone my size. People say 10,000 and all that sort of thing, but for me, that I've never needed that much. I'd say I'd normally go off 6,000. So let's say 3,000 to 3,500 calories is going to come from a ration pack, so that's going to be 3 to 4 main meals. You can get the big 1,000-calorie packs. You just add hot water, leave it for 15 minutes, and then you're away to go. And then the rest of your daily calorie intake is going to be coming through your snack packs. And in your snack pack, you're going to put in there whatever you want. It could be some biltong. You could have chocolate bars, protein bar. You could have some sweets, just literally whatever you want to make up the next 2,500 calories. Just stuff that you're going to want to eat would be my top tip to anyone listening to this who's going to row an ocean, because you can go down the nutritional angle of making sure that it's got fructose in it and it's got chia seeds in it and all that. But if you're not going to physically eat something, it's got no nutritional value in it. So actually having something that you're going to enjoy and you're actually going to eat it on the 2 a.m. shift that's going to give you that energy to carry on through the second half of your shift, that's the thing to take with you.
Yeah, I remember when I did the Wainwrights, which is like all the hills in the Lake District last year. I tried to do, I did them in 8 weeks. And I remember on the first day, I was there making tuna sandwiches. I mean, it's completely different, but it's the fact about the food. I remember taking tuna sandwich with me, and after 2 days, I was like, I'm sick of tuna sandwiches. I'll mix it up, and then I started taking other ones. And then eventually, I'd literally got so sick of all the food I was taking, and I eventually just started taking just bars of stuff that I wanted to eat. So by the end of it, I was literally just eating like a protein bar one day, like 1 hour, and then the next I'd eat like some muesli, and then it just comes down to what you want to eat, because I literally didn't want to eat. I was eating pork pies, I got sick of them. Sausage rolls, I got sick of them. Like, I've not eaten a pork pie since because it was horrible. But yeah, I get your point. You do some of the food that you think you might enjoy, after you have it for like 4 or 5 times in a row in the same day, you're like, I don't want to eat that ever again.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, mate, that was an awesome achievement. That I remember following that, and you got some awesome footage and photos from that as well. It was brilliant to see.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it's nothing compared to rowing an ocean, but it's my ocean row. That was.
Mate, it was great.
Cheers. Going back to sort of the life in the boat, you've mentioned you've done it in a group of 5. What's the smallest you would do it in? Because I know some people do solo ocean rows.
Yeah.
Is that like a completely different ball game doing it on your own?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously a huge undertaking going solo because, imagine being at sea there's a guy who finished yesterday, Ian Rivers, former SAS, and he rode from New York, set off on the 31st of May, and he just finished yesterday in the Isles of Scilly, having rode 3,200 nautical miles across the North Atlantic. I mean, what's that, 100 days nearly? By yourself. Imagine 100 days just not seeing another person. It's just like, it's a different game, isn't it, being solo? Like, it is phenomenal. And I think that is, for me, that is on the list of things that I want to achieve. Whether I get that opportunity, I'm not sure, but I would love to. It's obviously the real challenge with being a solo is you've got to do all the fundraising yourself. You've got to get everything ready. Whereas when you're a team, in that build-up phase, you can obviously split that responsibility. So it does make it is a big challenge and undertaking as a solo. So it is something I would love to do. I've spent a lot of time thinking about it, and when I did my pairs row with Gus, there's a lot of time there where I was just by myself on deck. So there's that's the closest I've come to doing any sort of solo rowing, is those shifts where you're by yourself, but you always know that there's your oppo in the cabin ready to come out to jump on the oars if you need them. Whereas when you're solo, you can't ever go up to go in 2 up to add more power. You're already at maximum capacity as soon as you're on the oars.
Wow, it's amazing. I remember following you. Was it last time you rowed? I think on the app. And I was like every day I'd get up and I'd look where you were on the app and things like that. But I can imagine, for the people back home, it's obviously very, very worrying, and I'm sure they're looking at the app all the time. Like, if it was someone in my family, I'd be there like thinking, like, oh God, like looking at the app every single second. Do people back home sort of get worried about you? You've done it so many times, obviously you're very experienced, but they must still worry.
Yeah, I think family do. The family are concerned and stuff, I think, but I think with that sort of that energy that comes from it just sort of ends up being translated into just huge support. I've been very fortunate. My girlfriend Jean, and she's been with me. We've been together through all of the rows that I've done, and I think all that energy just goes into like pure support. They just then get really invested in it, and just wouldn't be possible without them. My parents as well, they're like the biggest fans of ocean rowing now because they just get so invested in it. They're letting me know when teams are coming in. My mum sent me an update going, oh yeah, the track is saying they'll be in at this time, and I'm like, she absolutely loves it. And anytime I'm out with the team, she's sending me screenshots of like the tracker route and stuff. So yeah, I think they actually really enjoy it. But yeah, I think there is obviously that part of like you're out 1,000 miles from land somewhere. It is a bit of a crazy thing.
Yeah, just to ask both you and Justin, are we okay for time, Justin?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay, Duncan?
Yes, I should have said, mate, I've got a call booked in at 8 o'clock, so I probably need to shoot off.
We'll finish off
in
the next few minutes. One thing, I mean, I could talk to you for like another hour. I might have to get you back on. But there's one final thing I did want to ask before you let you go, and that's about things that can go wrong. Obviously, I'm sure you've got a lot of stories about this, but there must be a high chance of things like being swept out to sea, for example. What if something does go wrong like that? Like, is there anyone there to help you? Like, what happens when something does go badly wrong?
Yeah, mate, great question to sort of round up on. And yeah, I mean, in ocean rowing, it's notorious for things going wrong, and everything that could go wrong, can go wrong, and that's a big part of the training is preparing, with having redundancies for things, whether that's kit and equipment or different ways of doing the same task. If you lose a bit of equipment or something breaks or fails, what's your backup? What's your power management strategy? All these different things. As far as things getting swept out to sea. Generally we have things lanyarded onto the jack stays and stuff. So say like your water cans, that's one thing that if you lose them, because we make all of our own water on board using the solar panels on the boat, you've got a desalinator. If you lost your jerry cans, again, you're in a very difficult situation though, because you can then only fill up your personal water bottles, and then you might only have 8 litres of that on the boat, and then you then have to be making water at night time and there's no power coming in. So certain items like your big jerry cans, they've got to be lanyarded to the boat. So if you did capsize, they wouldn't get lost from the boat. Your oars, again, they're lanyarded to the boat. So the key items, shouldn't really get swept to sea. But yeah, you do every now and again for all the best trying in the world, you do lose the odd thing overboard. So you just have to hope that you've got redundancy for that planned in.
Brilliant. Well, it's been absolutely fantastic. I know you've obviously got a call to get to. I'm sure it's about ocean rowing, is it?
It is, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I'd love to chat more. It's I've got like so many questions to ask, but well, I wish I was listening to this interview.
I feel a pairs row coming on, lads.
Yes, definitely. Or a trio. Or me, you and Justin. Let's get that sorted out.
Here we go.
I think Justin will have to wait until his
give me a few years.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, thanks so much for coming on. It's been absolutely fantastic to chat to you.
Yeah,
been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much, Ollie. Thanks so much, Justin. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
All right, thanks.
Brilliant. You click that X and we'll finish up.
Great. Take care. Cheers, guys.
See you later.
All the best.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah,
I mean, I've literally got so many questions I wanted to ask. One of them was, do you ever get like cruise ships just like passing by and just going
I'd like to
what
know
are you doing?
about, like, gosh, there's so many if Lauren ever listens to this, she'll be like, yeah, you would be paranoid about everything. Like, I'd be worried about traffic. I'd be worried about pirates. I'd be worried about
pirates,
storms, and animals. Like, what are the contingency plans? Like, what's navigation like? Like, how do you know you're going where you're supposed to go? Who's steering?
Yeah.
Oh man. Especially if you're
there's
solo. If you're by yourself. Oh man.
Yeah. So I mean, we're asking very rhetorical questions here because we don't know the answers.
It's fun.
But if you're on your own,
you need to know.
If you're on your own, you'd be like, well, right, I'm going to go to sleep now, but I'm also going to fly like 100 miles back where I came from. Surely it's like demoralizing thinking, I've woke up and I've just been past this island with a palm tree last night and I'm going past it again. Like, how annoying is that?
Yeah.
And animals as well. What about, like, what animals do people see? You would expect, in my head, if I'm rowing along, within the first few hours, I'd be joined by a pod of dolphins. And then 20 minutes later, this whale would just jump over me.
Is it that busy with life out there?
Yes. In my head, it is. Definitely.
But is it really? Like, I know you think
probably
it is,
not.
but what's the
Probably
reality?
Not.
Or is it just, like, really quiet? Nothing.
That's why I was saying if I needed the toilet, I'd just get off, I'd go under the water, I'd be thousands of fish surrounding me. I mean,
how cold would it be? No, thank you. No.
And if you saw some sort of shark, which would be the main thing.
Yeah, that's a terrifying thought. Like, I have no desire to row an ocean. Now, we have Great Lakes. That seems fun to me. That would be an interesting task. It wouldn't take nearly as long.
No, I mean, we're talking about, so in the UK, we have some pretty big lakes, but they are nothing compared to your Great Lakes, are they?
Yeah, nothing compared to an ocean. But I'd like to know, I'm sure it's been done a ton. I'm sure people have swam across them, so that's not a big deal. I wonder how long it would take to row one of those lakes. I'll look that up.
We'd have to
See if
find
I
out.
can
Yeah, we'd have to
find
find out how long it is. Yeah, but it's something that I remember. What I remember speaking to Duncan. We had a phone conversation, probably 2019, towards the end of 2019, before COVID,
it.
because there was someone that I was chatting to who was doing an ocean row, and there was I was getting interested in potentially doing it in 2020, I think it was. Obviously, that all got sort of put back because of COVID and all that stuff. So we've not had a chat since. But it's something that I would love to do. It's a challenge that I would love to take.
But there's a challenge for your relationship. What if you and Rochelle take on a pairs row? No?
I think we'd have to employ do the toilets in the water scenario for that one. I don't think that would not come out
Turn
well.
around. Don't look at me.
Oh, I'm sure if there's two of you, you could sit there, and the person behind you could be
Oh man,
getting rid of
that's
whatever you need
interesting.
to.
Yeah.
Anyway,
what a good story. I would love to talk to him more. I feel like there's a lot we could cover.
Yeah,
Anyways.
and he's genuinely such a nice guy. Like he's probably, no offense to everyone else I've met, but he's one of the nicest guys that I've met. And what's the word I'm looking for? Like genuinely interested in what you're doing. Like, you know, not just saying stuff just to appear interested. Like, he's genuinely interested, and I can imagine the crews that he coaches, they get so much out of what Duncan gives them, because I know he will be vested in their journey and in their adventure. And yeah, I mean, some of the crews that he's coached, I've been following on the trackers, thinking like, oh, I hope they finish, and I hope they finish fast, because I know Duncan, and I know Duncan has put his all into them crews.
It's amazing that there's that many crews doing this. Like,
yeah,
rowing oceans is a thing.
Yeah,
it's a thing you can do.
It's something it's definitely something that you don't hear often, dear. But it's when you do hear it, I sort of get a bit jealous.
That's wild. 2 on, 2 off for 8 weeks.
I couldn't. I don't know how you sleep. I don't know how you sleep.
How do you get back to a routine after? Like when you get home?
Yeah, that must be hard.
I couldn't have. Like, what a shift. Anyways.
Anyway, so next week is you're off somewhere.
Be something. You're frozen. Hopefully
I'm
you come back. Oh.